today's video, we're going to go over TSQL loops. So we had a question from a subscriber, and the question was, hey, can you show an example of a loop in TSQL? Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Before we dig in, I just wanted to mention that set-based processing, which is where you go and you run like an update statement in a database, is generally more efficient than row-based processing, which is what TSQL loops are going to do. It's just basically go row by row. So for better performance, you want to use set-oriented processing. But sometimes there's a need to manage things row by row. And so we're going to show it. But the reason why it's more efficient is set-based processing is more efficient is because you have to pull every row back from the database server to your client, and that may or may not be on the same server. And also, you're going to need to there's a lot of network traffic that goes on with that. Obviously, all that data's got to come over. But then there's a lot of individual calls because every individual fetch in the loop incurs network overhead. And so you really want to avoid doing row-based processing as you can if you're trying to get the best performance. Okay, so with that said, let's go into the example. So what I've got here is just a real simple block of T-SQL code that is going to use a cursor, which is what TSQL loops are. And so we've got we're just declaring a variable, and I've got a table here. Basically what I'm doing is I've got a bunch of usernames that I've saved. So I've got a process that's running, and that process is doing a refresh from a production environment into a development environment. And the development environment has different set of users. And so those users need to be reapplied to the database after the restore is done. And so just a simple table here has all these usernames in it. And so we're going to iterate over each of them. And then we're going to call a store procedure called assign development login proofs for every username that comes back. So real simple example here. So what we're doing is just declaring some variables. So we got the variable for the name and the SQL we're going to run. And then we declare the cursor. So in this case, we're declaring a cursor for, and we've got our query. So select name from refresh saved users, which is going to basically give us a list of users. Then we need to open the cursor. Then we fetch the first row. And we put the value into the name variable that we've declared. And then we're going to iterate through. So while the fetch status is 0, we're going to go into our loop and we're going to assign SQL, and we're going to give the name of the store procedure we're going to call with the exec before it. And then we're going to give it the name that we've just fetched from the cursor. And then in this case, I'm just printing it out. I'm not running it yet. You would do an execute SQL and then call it. And here we're just fetching the next row. And then this will keep going, iterating until the fetch status is 0 or when it gets to the end of the result set. And then at the end here, we just have some cleanup. So we're going to close our cursor, and then we're going to deallocate our cursor. I wanted to give you one other example. So the first example we looked at was a cursor-based example, but you don't always use a cursor when you're using a T-SQL loop. And so here's an example that just uses a while loop and doesn't have any sort of database interaction. It's just basically going through. It declares a variable, an integer of 10, and then it says while I, which it starts out as 10, is less than 30, then it prints out the value, and then it just adds 10 to it in every iteration. So the first time through it would be 10, then it would add 10 to it, it'd be 20, it would still come in, and then we'd add 10 to it again, it would be 30, we'd run one more time, and it would add 10 to it again, it would be 40, and then the while condition would no longer be true and it would fall through. So that's just a real simple example of a while loop in T-SQL. That'll do it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll try and answer them with a video. Thanks, guys. Bye.